The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's RISMedia webinar series. Today's broker-focused event is brought to you by Buyside, Workman Success Systems, and RISMedia, and we are excited that you're here. We have some amazing guests today. As I get ready to introduce them, we're going to talk about really how to make an impression and win with leads, with a very heavy focus today on winning and converting listing leads. And I think it's going to be a fascinating webinar. For those of you that are joining us for the first time or you haven't been on a webinar with us, I'm going to encourage you to get familiar with your GoToWebinar control panel. And on the control panel, there's a place where you can click a button that asks for questions. Anytime you have a question, if you'll just go and click in that questions area and type your question in, I'll be monitoring the questions during the call, and then during appropriate breaks, I'll ask questions. We'll also be making available the slide deck from the webinar today to everybody, and there will be a special offer that will be given at the end of the webinar. At Workman Success Systems, our focus is to create and develop real estate teams. We work with brokerages and agents and helping them have all the systems and processes to be able to really compete in an environment where teams are becoming more and more prevalent. And one of the things that we've learned is that if you dominate with listings and you dominate with lead generation and you dominate with lead conversion, what happens is you don't have to wonder where your business is going to come from. And there's so many different ways of generating leads out there that when you find one that really works and you have proof of concept and you actually do case studies where you can validate the results or the return on investment, it makes it much easier to make intelligent decisions. We're very fortunate to have one of those partners with us today. We have Alissa Harper, who's the Vice President of Growth at Buyside. Buyside aggregates active buyers to generate buyers' activity, generating online empowering actionable insights and intelligent marketing tools. And they make it so that brokers can have an intentional focus to capture and convert more seller leads. And as a result of that, win more listings and just flat out dominate and close more transactions. Alissa, thank you for joining us, and thank you for being a partner in this great webinar series.
Yeah, Verl, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. Thank you for the introduction. You know, just to provide a little bit more context for those of you that might not be familiar with Buyside, we help just about 75 of the largest brokerage firms in the country, including folks like Fox and Roach and Sotheby's, who we have on the line today. And we help them really be able to better leverage their company data to win new business. And you might be thinking, you know, what the heck does that mean? So just to give you kind of a little bit more context, Buyside really collects all the buyer activity that's associated with your brokerage. This means buyers that are looking for property on your company website, but also buyer activity on the big portals like Zillow and Trulia, or even buyers that are out touring properties with your agents or checking into open houses. So we really go behind the scenes to pull together all that data and really give you the most comprehensive pool of buyers that are working with your brokerage in real time. And with that information, our clients are essentially able to tell a homeowner or a prospective seller not only what the real-time demand is for their property, but can actually show them exactly how many buyers actively working with your brokerage firm who are a perfect match for that property. And what we found is that capability really allows our brokerage clients to not only capture more seller leads, but really arms their agents with a powerful differentiator to help them win more listings and then get those listings closed more quickly. So our brokerage clients are seeing some pretty powerful results, which is why I'm really excited to hear from our experts, Rajeev and Karina, on some tips and tricks about how they're utilizing tools like Buyside and others to really impress and win over today's consumer. So with that, I'll pass it over to you guys.
Well, thank you, and thank you again for being part of the broker series. And you have to know that the reason we're able to put these great webinars on and deliver great content is because of phenomenal partners like you. So thank you for being part of it, and I'm excited to hear from both Rajeev and from Karina today as well. And so without further ado, let's introduce our first guest. And I got to tell you that when I just look at the title, I don't even have to wonder if it's going to be great information. Rajeev Sajja is the Vice President of Digital Innovation at Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices, Fox and Roach in the tri-state area. So it's Delaware, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. He has amazing experience in e-business, technology, and as a mentor at NAR's REACH program. And Rajeev, thank you for being here. I'm excited to hear. In our pre-call, it was kind of fun to learn a little bit more about what you're doing with digital innovation at Berkshire Hathaway, Fox & Roach. So welcome to the call.
Thank you, Verl. Thank you for having me. Good to hear from Alissa as well as RISMedia for putting this call together. So just to give you a little context, if I could take everyone back in terms of time 2 years ago when Fox & Roach and many broker websites, I'm assuming there's a lot of brokers on the call, that if you go back and look at your broker website, many of them are very buyer focused in a market where, as a company, we're a very listing centric company. And we've sort of made a clear focus to drive more seller lead gen. And that's when we started our partnership with Buyside. And we started a little over 2 years ago with a What's My Home Worth campaign. And I'm sure all your agents talk about this estimate, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we wanted to just sort of offer 3 solutions. If you could go to the next slide here, Verl, for me, really quick. And show that we put Zillow right in the middle of that, but we also wanted to give them a comprehensive view of what their home was worth. So become more of an information resource, but also catch people up in the funnel of people that are thinking to list their home. Traditionally, data has said that people that are thinking to list their home months down the road will look for their home valuation. So we wanted to get in front of that. When we launched this campaign 2 years ago, we took a 2-pronged approach. One was a broker level campaign of What's Your Home Worth, where we did digital ads on paid media. We also did billboards. If you were in the greater Philadelphia area, you would have seen a big giant digital billboard with What's Your Home Worth, come to foxroach.com. But we also empowered our agents. We have close to 5,000 sales associates. All of them got a branded What's My Home Worth page, and Buyside gave tools in the Buyside platform to uniquely market their own individual page for seller lead gen, whether it's an email marketing campaign, even down to how to update their email signature with What's My Home Worth. Think of how many emails we send out every day. So all that put together contributed to the success we've had, and really clearly shifted our focus from a buyer lead gen type of solution to really driving seller lead gen. And it's clearly been very successful. We can clearly do a lot more, but it gave us a window into what all we could do with the platform. And we have 2 types of lead capture on these pages. Once people search for their home, we present 3 values. There's a contact agent, which if people are really listing their house, they'll obviously reach out. But the more obvious one is sign up for some kind of a monthly newsletter. And we tied it into an internal program that sends them a valuation monthly and comps around their home, things like that. And we get a pretty high open rate. I mean, in today's real estate industry, our email marketing engines, MailChimp, services like that put out stats. It's 22% open rate for real estate emails. We get close to a 52% emails on people that subscribe and get that information about their home. So clearly, that conversion path is as critical as driving people to your landing pages. So you want to think about the entire customer journey and not just bringing them to these pages. So once they sign up, they get that. They also are tied into our CRM. If you could go to the next slide, Verl, for me. We're tied into the CRM. The pages are going to talk a lot about how many buyers there are. I think Karina is going to get into that a little bit more with the BMA and the listing presentation. But we have a CRM that these leads go into, and as they plug into this monthly newsletter, they're also being, if you're an agent, they get plugged into a campaign. We call it a client marketing plan that encourages our agents or reminds them to make a phone call or text them, email them in the first 7 to 14 to 21 days. So there is a clear path for driving, warming up those leads to see how close they are to potentially listing their home. So if you could go to the next slide here, Verl, for me. And it's all about, everybody says they got buyers, but you had this, Buyside really gave us an engine to show the value and actually show the count of buyers that potentially can match your home. And these are the pages that exist today when they type in their home address. And even if they don't register, you really have their home address. So if you're into farming, you sort of have an idea of who searched for home valuation. So that's another area where you can probably use intelligence and use that data to send print pieces of what's my home worth pieces to those people as well if they don't register or and give you your email, etc. So if you could push to the next slide here, World, for me.
Rajeev, I just as you're talking about that, I love it. So when you show that they can go into what's my home's worth, shows you on the target where it is and how many buyers might be searching on your site right now. I think that is such a differentiator. So few sites actually do that. I think that there's intelligence that we've held in the back office of our sites, but to create a portal where the consumer can actually see it, that creates a whole different emotional stir that there's actually people out there that'd be interested in my house today. I think it's a feature that I think we should highlight and really make sure that you're not having to do anything. This is all automated. It's all part of the automated portal.
Yeah, I mean, we've all heard, you got to use data-driven insights to drive your marketing. I mean, we live in a data economy. And to your point, World, I mean, these numbers that you're seeing at the top, above 34, are not just the broker website. Buyside sort of aggregates a variety of sources, including the number of leads we've gotten on Zillow, what properties they inquired about, Realtor.com, all the sources the broker subscribes to, including showing time. If an agent is actually going with a buyer to show a property, there's interest in that property, all those data points that are applicable are pulled into those numbers, so you can actually tell a comprehensive story to your potential seller. So that's really the purpose of that data. And to your point, it happens automatically, but Buyside does all the work for you. So you can tell that story.
So it's kind of fascinating to me that we've gone from a world where, hey, just do anything so they'll tell you their name and phone number and don't give them enough information. And then when it gives us, we try and validate our value in the transaction, to now today we're giving them so much information that they believe if we give them so much information, they'll tell us who they are because we've already given them so much value. I think that's really been interesting to watch the shift of how we do lead generation.
Yeah, no question. I mean, in today's day and age, I mean, brokers deal with a lot of data. I mean, we consume so much of data. Unfortunately, you just can't make good decisions with data because it's not organized, it's not structured. And it reminds me of a quote from Arianna Huffington from Huffington Post that said, and she quoted this in 2016. She said, "We're drowning in data and starving for wisdom." It really makes
I love that.
Yeah, and Buyside sort of aggregates that data so you can actually make data-driven decisions that are actionable, that give you actionable insights for your company. Right? And this slide sort of talks a little bit about the different types of calls to action an agent can do, starting with an email signature, virtual postcard, share on social media, widget for your website, print prospecting. So this talks about the journey of who you capture and how you can capture them. That's equally important than just the actual tool itself. And as the numbers say, in the first 45 days, the broker level promotion yielded 51,000 valuation attempts. And we really engaged our agents in that promotion. And the other thing I'd like to mention here is it was the first time when we launched this tool is where, adoption, every broker struggles with adoption at various levels. So we started to try to gamify adoption. So we launched a game and introduced this through a game that educates them and gives them prizes for learning and doing things. So for example, if somebody did a valuation on their page, they get an entry into a game. If they answer a question, they get entry into a game. So by using and deploying the new technology that we're giving them entries into a game where we I think gave away up to 25,000 of prizes over a 3-month launch time, where they played this game, and we tried to make it fun and launch new things, and that was part of. And we've sort of maintained that culture now with everything new we do. We try to gamify the experience.
I think it's so important. Everyone's really good about generating leads, but the conversion and getting the agents engaged in it makes a huge difference. Alissa, did you have a comment or question?
I was just going to say, yeah, I love that concept, Rajeev, because I think, being in this industry, I think we can all appreciate the challenges associated with rolling out new marketing and technology tools to agents, right? I mean, they're just inundated with tools and with features each day. And so I think as brokerage leaders, it's really up to us to kind of wade through what's going to deliver value and what's really going to increase and help them win new business. And so finding a way to make it fun and engaging for those agents to buy into the new technology is pretty impressive. So I love that you guys did that, Rajeev.
Yeah, absolutely. Seems to work out well. So if you could switch to the next slide, we'll come back to this one, Verl. We talked a little bit about CRM and the some level of automated drips, which is they're automatically signed up if they give us their email to get a monthly report on their home that includes valuation, which I talked about with the 52% open rate. We use Toolkit CMA, and they've integrated with Buyside. So when an agent runs a CMA today with Toolkit, we have the ability for them to pick a shorter version of something called a buyer market analysis that Karina is going to get into at great length that you're going to learn about. So it's not launching technology in a silo. You want to think about how it fits into your entire stack of services, and we've attempted to plug it into all of the areas that are applicable. So that's something. So if you could go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about the results we've gotten for the last 2 years. So we've had over 110,000 inquiries of people coming to company or agent branded pages for what's your home worth and putting in their home address, out of which 5,300 of them have put in an email saying, I want to learn more about a property, about my property. And out of which, and if you believe that people do a what's your home, look at their home valuation, and somewhere down the funnel, they list their home, we've signed 2,144 listings that came out of people that were those 5,328 that have searched for and signed up to be informed, and that converted into a $915 million value of listing signs. So that's a little over a 2-year time frame. And imagine what that would do to a brokerage that really 2 years ago we shifted and made it a formal focus of driving more seller leads in a buyer-centric broker world, at least online. So we're pretty thrilled with the results so far, and we want to take it to the next level. So,
and I appreciate you actually giving some numbers, because I think that oftentimes when people talk about a company or a product or a rollout of a strategy, it's all really bright and great on the front end, but we don't get to hear what happened 2 years later. And so thanks for sharing those kinds of numbers. As you were doing your rollout and you talked about gamifying, there's been a couple questions that people wanted to know: is the gamifying of a feature of Buyside, or was the gamifying of adoption something that you did? And could you give us a little bit more, couple of ideas or specifics of the contest you might have run to get agents excited about it?
Yeah, no, it was a service we used, a local media company that is strictly in games, creating games about products and services. But obviously, we pulled data from Buyside because they had to do valuations. If somebody signed up for the newsletter, they got multiple entries. So there's data came from Buyside, but the game was built and done by a local media company that was inserted into our intranet. So when they logged in every day, they just played a game every day with entries they gathered, and they won prizes. So it was something we did outside of Buyside, but Buyside gave us the data because that data was part of the entries they gained in the gamification experience. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, it does, and I think that's a great idea. Sometimes it makes sense to use someone who specializes in gamifying a project, especially when you have 5,000 agents that you're trying to get adoption with. There was a previous slide that we skipped. Do you want me to go back to that?
Yeah, please go back to that. So one of the things Buyside offers is a platform that is not just, obviously, we're focusing on the what's your home worth piece, but they also give us a platform where we can enter buyers, that connect them with listings that are coming on the market. So very recently, I call Buyside the Match.com for real estate. So everybody gets it when you use that analogy. And it connects buyer agents and listing agents together. So we launched a pretty big program around coming soon. And when a listing is entered in Buyside, We actually are one of the first brokers in the country syndicated to Zillow, and we push it to Zillow. We also do a coming soon Facebook ad for 2 days, and all that is driving more and more people to put their coming soon listings into Buyside, which triggers buyers in our system on Buyside can learn, buyer agents can learn about new listings that are coming on the market, chances of more in-house deals when the listing goes on the market, more awareness, pre-marketing to the extent allowed by the local MLS guidelines. So we're doing coming soon new listing and open house Facebook ads that are also fully automated through a vendor that we partner with. But the coming soon piece is from Buyside, but it's part of an overall solution for digital advertising for our listings. So I want to make that point that that's also something that we've recently launched, and there was I think an Inman write-up about that as well, since we did that very recently, early April actually.
I think it's
So
it's not a single tool or technology that you're using, but it's you're combining the resources of the other company provided tools, Facebook, you're integrating into Zillow. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts here. Where do you start building a mind map on all of the pieces that you're going to have to bring together to create this exceptional client experience and get the kind of lead conversion that you're getting? Where do you start?
I mean, I think it really starts with what is your core focus. I mean, we as a company are a listing-centric company, and so we're always looking for an edge on how we make a better value proposition for our listing agents when they go into listing presentations and all those things. And we've gotten a tremendous response on the coming soon stuff we're doing with Zillow and the Facebook ads. Literally every day I get messages from agents that say, I got like 15 leads so far, and the listing's not even on the market. Not just what it does for that particular listing, but look at what you could do with the possible buyer leads you're gathering with other listings that come on the market. So I think it just starts with a core focus of what is the game you want to win at, and you want to pull all stops and really do a real good job, and hopefully people appreciate it.
I appreciate that. If I could just ask one other quick question, is I'm going through this and I'm looking at the integration. I know where you get your title of VP of Digital Innovation, because I see a lot of innovation here, and I think that you're living up to the title that you have. Somebody asked a question about who pays, meaning when you have so many agents and you're providing services to the agents, everybody has different commission concepts and different services they provide. The question is the broker paying for the coming soon ad, or is the agent in the pre-listing phase doing it, or is there a combination of both?
We currently have focused on the broker pays for the Facebook ads we're talking about. And I have to mention regarding the open house, it's not every open house. Once a month we do a mega open house extravaganza. We announce the weekend. So it's actually coming up May 19th and 20th. So any open house of the company that is open that weekend is what gets advertised. So it's 1 weekend a month for open houses. New listings, we've just decided to do it as a differentiator in our listing presentation on Facebook. And sellers see it. Not many other brokers are doing it across the board. It becomes part of our brand promise. So it's about finding where our budget is and redirecting some of it, and not necessarily creating more budget for some of this stuff. And we feel like Facebook's an engine that we need to leverage. And I feel like at least in the short term, we're going to just do more with those type of channels than less.
Yeah, I think when you get these kind of numbers, it's pretty easy to quantify your return on investment, because you've got the data that supports it. And having that data come back to you that says, look, when we spend X dollars, we get this kind of a return. When you look at 915 million in listings signed, and if you even expand that for every listing, our data shows that for every listing we get, we end up closing 1.5 buy-sides. And so there's 1.5 times that in buy-side transactions if you work it correctly. And so there's an enormous amount of opportunity that's been created here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, love it. Thank you. And Rajeev, I hope you don't mind if you'll stay on the webinar with us, and let's talk to Karina as she shares with us what's going on over at One Sotheby's International, and then we'll open up to questions for both of you as we get towards the end. So let me introduce Karina Lopez, Vice President of Marketing and Operations for at One Sotheby's International Realty. It's in the areas of Broward and Miami in Florida. She has tremendous experience in brand development, marketing, with a really strong background on encompassing the financial and encompassing both the financial and the hospitality industries, as well as expertise in real estate. Karina, thank you for being on the call today, and we're excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your company and what you're doing to generate and convert more of the opportunities that are out there online.
Sure. So very much like Rajeev mentioned, our website was very much focused on buyers. A lot of our business is focused on promoting the listings that we had, which was great. But when it comes to prospecting, even when you have listings, it's very, very important to work on generating those seller leads. You need to constantly be hunting. So we realized that we need to make that shift. We also saw that opportunity in our market where there really was no other company that was actively pursuing seller leads in a strategic, smart way. So when the opportunity came about to meet with Buyside, we were thrilled because it was perfectly aligned with what we wanted to do. It was a gap in our business that we needed, and it was exactly the kind of thing that we needed to allow our agency use to keep them relevant. We're in a very, very competitive market. We're in a market where there's a lot of brokerages and there's a lot of tools, which is, it's difficult, but it's good for us because it makes us keep ahead of the curve. It makes us stay ahead of the curve and pushes us to find and align with this kind of technology like Buyside is. So we're very excited to speak to them, and the information that they provide to possible sellers is unlike any other. When you think about a homeowner, and if you're a homeowner, you know that the most important thing that you want to know constantly is the value of that investment. It's one of the most personal investments that you have, and if you have stocks, it's the same kind of thing. You constantly want to know how your stocks are doing, how your personal investment is doing. And Buyside allows sellers to be able to get that information without any kind of commitment, without speaking to anyone, because whether we like it or not, as real estate agents and brokers, our first impression is happening online without us. So rather than fighting that, what we wanted to do is say,
Karina, I'm sorry. Your audio is just a little bit fuzzy, and I don't know if it's if you have a handset you can pick up or it's in relationship to your speaker on your computer, but it's coming a little bit fuzzy, and I want to make sure everybody can hear you clearly.
Sure. How's now? How is this?
I think that's a little bit better.
Okay. So when it came to the seller leads, we just wanted to make sure that we could get the information over to our agents and empower them with the information that sellers would be looking for. And that's the kind of information that Buyside allows.
Perfect.
So on to the next
slide.
Much better.
You sound much better. I don't know what you did, but that sounds a lot better.
Okay, good. I actually put you on speaker. I thought it'd be worse that way, but I'll keep it this way.
No.
All right. So when it comes on this slide, what we'll see is Buyside helped us realize that the kind of information that a seller is looking for is very different than what we thought. A lot of times we were going into a listing presentation saying, this is what we can offer you. This is where we can market your listing. This is the value behind our brand. We led with what we can do. But really what the seller wants and what they want to know is, what can you do for me right now? What kind of buyers are available for my home? And of course, the value of my home. They lead with those two questions. Where do you price my listing? And who can you contact today to try to get activity into the home as quickly as possible? And that's exactly what Buyside provides. So on the slide right now, what you'll see is what sellers or clients wrote back as saying what's most valuable to them and what's least valuable. So it really turned the conversation upside down. A lot of times we led what the company could do and then ended with the valuation of the home. So now we're starting with the valuation and letting them get that information online without reaching out to us right away, but making sure that when they get that information, our contact information is there so we can clarify and become that trusted resource for them. But we want them to feel that they can find information on their home in one consolidated resource rather than having to go to several different websites. They find it all on the page. They get the valuation of their home. They see how many buyers we have in our system for that specific home. And they also see other information such as the activity in their specific area. What kind of days on market can they look at for if they were to list their home? And then the call to action throughout is to contact a qualified real estate agent, because a lot of people are now thinking that they can, do a real estate transaction maybe on their own. But the intent of the Buyside page and the valuation page is all of our agents are getting and sharing with their clients saying, this is all the information out there. It's slightly confusing. If you look at the valuation on your home, the price range is pretty spread out. You need to work with us, and if you're ready to work with someone, you can contact us and we can guide you through this difficult transaction or through this tricky transaction. So what we ultimately end up saying is we can be that trusted resource for you whenever you're ready. What Rajeev also touched on is when it comes to working with seller leads or generating seller leads, a lot of times as agents, and we were doing the same thing, we were working in that funnel a little bit too late. We were trying to get seller leads through expired campaigns or through contacting them after the listing had already been on the market. So at that time, the client is already working with someone or they're already too deep into the funnel. So what can we do to get ahead of the decision and be part of that decision from the very, very beginning? And giving them this information, letting them do the research on their own is part of the reason that we're able to do that. We actually had one story where one of our agents, he was working a specific area. It was a very small street near downtown Miami with just a few single-family homes. The values were going up because they were very close to downtown. He sent out what the system has, which is a buyer's market analysis, which is a report that shows the 3 valuations of the home, the activity that they can expect in that area, and how many buyers he, as an agent, had access to. He sent that over to a few specific homes that he thought that he could actively market and have good activity for. He sent it with a personalized introductory letter, and that letter with the valuation report ended up at the home of one of my family members. My family member called me, said, "Oh, I just got this from one Sotheby's Realty. This is so funny. This is great." I said, "Oh, who was it? Let me tell them that you got it. Let me congratulate him." So I'm talking to my family member, and we're saying, this is interesting. And I asked her, I said, "What did you think about the report?" And she says, "You know what? I had no idea that my home was valued at this price. The prices in this area, I knew that they were going up, but I didn't know that they were at this point." And she said, "Do you think it's worth putting my house on the market?" And this was someone that wasn't in the market to sell. They weren't meeting with real estate agents or looking for information out there, but they received information that was very specific and pertinent to them. And it made her question whether it was the right time to sell. So that's the kind of thing that it makes people question. And even if they're not ready at that specific time, when they are ready, they know who to go to because you are the first one to give them that information.
Karina, I love that you're talking about, I love that specific story. But what I love about it is what goes through my mind as a marketer is I'm thinking, okay, so when there's a limited inventory, there's a lack of an inventory, we can take other people's, but what about the whole concept of creating new inventory where it didn't even exist by giving people
Right.
information that lets them know that their house is maybe worth more than they thought and gives them an opportunity to sell now and do something different. I love the concept of creating new inventory. When the market is tight and there's limited inventory, what do? Create new inventory. That's what I got out of that story is let's expand the size of the market. I love that.
Exactly. Instead of hunting the same thing that everybody's hunting, let's go further up the funnel and speak to people who could be possible clients. And maybe not right away. Some might be right away, but you're creating those relationships from earlier on. And it's a little bit of an untapped market.
I don't think it's a little bit of an untapped market. I think it's a massive untapped market.
I agree. So the Buyside tool has really been able to help us do that. Our agents have really embraced it. In the next slide, we can see a little bit of what the report looks like. So what you show here and where it says winning the listing presentation, this is a buyer market analysis that one of our agents sent out, which ties into the story. But what this allows the clients, our agents, to do is tell the clients, okay, these are the kind of buyers that I have available in our company. And if you see, you can say it says buyer ID 1234. It says exactly what they're looking for. And all of those are active buyers within one Sotheby's International Realty. So if I were an agent, all that I would have to do is log into my account and see which other agent within one Sotheby's International Realty is working with those buyers. The idea for a seller, a potential seller, is these are people that that my agent can start calling today to set up showings before the listing even goes live. This means that my agent can go off and running and start marketing my listing and not have to, put up the marketing pieces, do an open house, and then wait for the buyers to start coming in after. These are people, this is a prospect list that they can start working today. And it's really, really important because as an agent, it really does give you that leg up in the competition to say, I can start right away, because that's the other thing that they always want to know. When are you going to get my listing up? When are the pictures going to be ready? When are you going to start bringing in buyers and offers? This allows that process to begin a lot sooner. When it comes to the agent side, the reason why we saw the value in the system was because we really saw that the agents have access to so much more information. They see all these buyers that we have in the system. They see all these buyers that other agents are working with, so that we can, like Rajeev mentioned, that matching process can work. When a new listing goes live, it automatically matches to the buyers that we have in our system. What you see on the slide right now is another tool that we have, because when it comes to engagement and when we introduced Buyside, we knew that we really wanted the agents to use it, because the system truly thrives with agent engagement. So rather than having only the BMA and telling our agents to go out and send it, we tied in this open house app, which is what you see on the screen. This app is very, very simple. When we launched it, all it really does is it replaces that registration sheet of paper that you have at an open house. It collects contact information, name, email, when they're looking to buy. On the next slide, you can see the email that the visitor to an open house receives after they visited an open house. So just quick information about the home that they visited, contact information of the agent. Very, very simple on the surface. The agent, on the next slide, you'll see they get a log of everybody that visited that open house. Great, nothing really groundbreaking. It's just a way to easily gather the information, avoid the data entry from the sheet of paper to the computer, allow for immediate follow-up. But what we started to think after we aligned with Buyside was, this is all information about buyers. Each person that visits an open house is a potential buyer for a home, and the kind of home that they're looking for is going to be very close to the home that they visited. So we worked with Buyside and we said, we have this tool. We want to make sure that the buyers in the system are constantly being updated, that there's always buyers in there, so that that BMA, that report that we send to sellers, has a good amount of buyers in it. They're active, they're very accurate, and they're constantly being updated. The process through Buyside is that the agents input that information manually, which is great, but we knew that, at least in our company, we needed that buyer pool to be a little bit more automated. So we worked with Buyside to integrate this app, so every visitor to the open house would be syndicated into Buyside as a buyer. So if I visited an open house, 1234 Main Street, and it was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath in Coral Gables for $500,000, after I visit that home, my information is sent over to the Buyside system as a buyer looking for a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom home in Coral Gables for around $500,000. The minute a listing goes live that meets those qualifications, or if there's another active listing that meets those qualifications that for me as a buyer, I'm matched to that listing. So the agent on that other listing is automatically matched to the agent that represented me as a possible buyer, and a transaction can happen a little bit easier. So we did everything that we could to make it easier for the agents to use, to make the system even stronger, and to automate the process even more, because we know that the agent's job is difficult. They're not behind a computer all the time. They're out on the streets. They're making their calls. They're doing their showings. So the integration of this app into the system was key for us. So when it comes
Karina, do you mind tell me a little bit about the size of your company, the number of agents, how many people are engaged in the system?
Sure. So we have 14 offices right now, about 800 agents, just over 750. From the very beginning, we launched Buyside a year ago, and we had really active engagement. I remember speaking to the team and asking, okay, how are we doing? Who's signing on? Who's the best user? Because in the very beginning, we did a competition. So those agents that shared their valuation page the most and that received the most amount of valuations, we gave them a score. Those agents that input the most amount of buyers were given a score. So we did a little bit of a competition, and we wanted to reward the agents that were actively using it. Right after that, we spoke to the Buyside team and said, okay, overall, how are we doing? What can we do better? How can we get more people in there? They let us know that at that point, we were one of the companies that had the most amount of engagement within the first month. So we were really happy. That was an immediate sign to me and to the management team that we were introducing a system that worked. We were introducing a system that was very relevant to the team, easy to use for the agents, and we were doing something right, which is very exciting for us. Our engagement today is still very strong. We recently had the Buyside team visit us just last week to do kind of a re-engage. We've had some growth in the past year, so we wanted to have Buyside come down, do the trainings all over again for those who hadn't, use the system very much, and those who had attended the trainings last year and have been using it but could use a refresher. The great thing about the system is that there's so much to it. It's not just a system that you use it once and you forget about it. It's something that you can use over and over again in several different ways, and it's constantly growing and adapting, which is what we loved about it.
One of the questions that keeps popping up is, we are going through tools really fast. You showed the, what's my home worth and the different ways of getting that information, and then how it's going out. And then we went into real quick into this really cool open house app, and everybody was like, the question board kind of lit up. Well, who does that? And I think if I understood it correctly, that it's part of your Buyside package is the open house integration and the open house registration. Is that correct?
The open house app was something that we created separately, but it was a tool that we presented to Buyside and said, we want to integrate it. We want to make the system even stronger. We want to get the buyers into your system a little bit in a more automated way. So two different things, but it was just, the open house app is just an example of what Buyside was able to do with something that we had existing, a tool that we already had, to make their system even stronger and more relevant to our agents.
I appreciate that. Alissa, can I ask you, how flexible is the Buyside technology for integrating other third-party apps into a company's overall digital marketing strategy?
Yeah, great question, Verl. So our philosophy at Buyside is really to kind of create the most comprehensive pool of buyers that are engaged with our brokerage clients, right? Because it would be great if all your buyers stayed on just your company website. But we know consumers today, and we know that they jump around, right? So they might go look at some properties on your brokerage site and then go over to Zillow and Trulia and Realtor.com. Or as Karina said, go in and check into an open house, or like Rajeev pointed out, they might be out touring properties. So our mission is really to integrate all of those different data sources that are relevant for our clients. So our team really goes behind the scenes and does the work to pull in that data from quite a few different sources.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Karina, tell me a little bit about your case study.
So in the past year, as the slide shows, we've signed 153 listings that resulted from the Buyside system, which means there was an address that it was input as a valuation, and soon after that, it became an active listing, and that is valued at $221 million in listings signed. All in all, what we really saw was that the Buyside system and the valuation pages were creating opportunities where there weren't any before. Like we said, we had that hole in our technology and in our systems where our agents weren't able to effectively market to sellers. We as a company were not doing the best that we could, and the Buyside system was a perfect solution for that. Where we were able to get new business, we were able to get to that untapped market, and these are the numbers that speak to that. Of course, it was all due to the Buyside training that was done by the team, the engagement that our agents worked on, the constant updating to the system that Buyside has done to make it relevant. We've had a very close relationship throughout this past year. Whenever we've had a question or we've had an idea of how to make the system stronger, they've been extremely, extremely receptive. Our agents correspond with the Buyside team directly. They have a Facebook page that's just for Buyside insiders. So it's agents from all over the country that are using the Buyside system that are sharing tips, best practices, things like that. So it's overall a very approachable system, which is in huge part due to the success of it.
I love that, and I appreciate you sharing the results that you're getting with it. If you were to make a recommendation for a company that's adopting a new technology, or they're trying to get adoption of a current technology that you believe has is a great resource, but you're not getting it to be adopted at the level you are, what are 2 or 3 things that you would recommend to a brokerage that is struggling with adoption?
Adoption is always a tricky thing, but what I've realized is repetition is the best solution to that. You have to repeat the trainings consistently at different times, and it almost has to come from different people. What I've learned is that a tool that I share one day may not be relevant to one agent, but in a month or so, when their business changes and they're prospecting a little bit more and they're slower on their active listings, that's when the tool might be relevant. So the consistency in the training is key. Getting in front of the agents and sometimes having them hear from someone else. What we realized is we always had one person doing the training before, But we had our company truly become an ambassador for this specific system and do trainings at different office meetings from different levels of the marketing team, from our office managers. People relate to different people and in different ways. So that's been key for us. It's also about the case studies, showing success stories and sharing great ways that the system has been used by other agents, saying, the story that I told you, this agent did this. He used the system in a very strategic, smart way, and he was able to make at least one person pick up the phone and say, should I list my home? Is it a good time to sell right now? Those case studies are also important. And what we also want to do, what we realized that we should start implementing a little bit more, is having the agents within smaller meetings, smaller office meetings, have them speak to the system. Because the best that another agent can hear is from another peer, rather than us from a management level telling them how it's working. Let the agents speak to it. Let them speak to what's working, what's not working, how it can be improved. And that's where that trust factor with them is really, it's at its highest. So those are the three things I would say, but repetition in the training is really key.
I think all three of those are solid and brilliant, actually. It sounds like you're very big on using an influencer model, that you've taken influencers within your own channel and have them be the champions of the thing, and so of the tool, share their successes, right, and have that resonate with their peers. I think that's really great. I think as brokers, sometimes we like to hear ourselves talk, and I don't think that that's necessarily who the agents want to hear. They want to hear other people of their peers that are having success with that. So I think that being intentional on your part instead of accidental is really great advice for our brokers that are out there. Rajeev, would you like to add anything to that? I mean, from adoption perspective, how do you get such a high level of adoption when you have so many people? It's like, I've heard it said that when you have that many agents, it's like herding cats.
I'll leave that comment alone, herding cats comment. But I think Alissa touched on repetition is one. The other thing that I think often it gets overlooked is looking at what an agent's day in the life of an agent, and looking at that and inserting tools that are valuable into their existing stream. Like, I love what Karina talked about, the open house stuff. We work with Spacio. There is an opportunity for us if they use that for some level of automation. The other area that we can all look at is marketing automation. Could we potentially send a BMA automatically to someone that is triggered by data, so the agent doesn't have to do it? And if you do it for an agent without them having to do it, you're going to get the maximum adoption. So there are some areas that we could look at that could potentially automate the BMA and things of that nature. We've also looked at, could we send every client in an agent's database a what's your home worth email that's well crafted that comes to them once a year without the agent having to do it. It's all triggered by data. So there's a lot of automation stuff that can happen with this kind of stuff that will drive adoption, obviously.
I appreciate that. Alissa, there's several questions on here that are just about Buyside. If you don't mind me asking a couple, is this primarily a brokerage product that you're providing for a brokerage, or can individual agents participate? And then what's the best place for them to go and get more information?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, Buyside is primarily a large brokerage solution. We typically work with kind of market leaders in their area. There's obviously a lot of value that these brokerage firms generate in terms of their buyer data, and being able to apply that to generate seller leads and win listings. So yes, at this point in time, we're only working with brokerage clients. And if you're an agent on the line and you're interested, definitely reach out and connect us with your brokerage. We'd be happy to chat with them. For more information, you can head over to getbuyside.com, which is www.getbuyside.com.
I appreciate that. So if for both Rajeev and for Karina, I'd like to ask you what's next on the horizon. What are some of the things that you're planning for the rest of 2018?
We're chatting a little bit about CRM capabilities and contact management. So we just announced this week that that's our next big effort. So we've already talked to Buyside about how we can integrate our CRM with them, and we just announced that we're working with Contactually and launching that for our agents to make sure that they're prospecting correctly and staying on top of all the touch points that they have with their clients in a very easy, organized way.
Similar, I mean, we're going through a little bit of a transition in looking at our entire marketing technology stack and finding best-of-breed solutions that would seamlessly integrate to deliver a very high level of agent experience. And that's the area that we're sort of focused on, which includes websites, which includes lead gen, which includes CRM. We've sort of walked away from buying into a one platform philosophy because most of the platforms we've seen or we've been on are good at some things and they're really poor at some other areas. So we've sort of said, okay, let's take it in a Lego approach and find the right Legos and make them fit properly so it comes and looks nice at the end of the day. So that's really our focus for the rest of the year.
I'd love to hear you say that because so many people try and have one thing be the solution to everyone and everything, and they end up over promising and under delivering. And I think it's really important that we understand where the strengths are of our technology partners or any of our partners, and then really let them do what they do well and not try and make them be something they're not. So to hear you say that that you've adopted that philosophy is refreshing because you don't really hear that from a lot of industry leaders. So thank you for
that's our story. That's my story, and we're sticking to it.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So let me ask you about a question when it comes to, and this is not a question either one of us are prepared for. When it comes to dealing with offers today, and when it comes to deal with limited inventory, there's a lot of challenges in helping our agents get their offer accepted when you're negotiating and you're trying to get things done. Are there any tips or things that you can give to our listeners that will help them or that you're sharing with your agents to help their offers get accepted in multiple offer situations?
That's a question for the audience, Verl, I would tell you. There's probably very qualified people listening to this seminar that can actually tell more about that. So I wouldn't be as qualified as people that are brokers that can give you some strategies for multiple offers.
I appreciate
that.
I'm going to plead the fifth on that one.
It's a training thing. It's a training thing, right? It's how are we setting our people up? Karina, do you have any thoughts on that?
I agree that it's a training thing. I obviously I'm not the expert on this either, but I think from a brokerage level, training your agents on how to do this, how to present the offers in the most strategic way is important, and making sure that they're armed with the ammunition that they need from the brokerage level. But as far as exact strategies, I would defer to the ones that know the best.
All right, let me just share with you a solution that I'll just make available to everybody. But so I like Rajeev. He says, I'll bet you have a lot of listeners, a lot of people that are on the call that have the great answers to these kinds of questions. And I like to call it the wisdom of the crowd. I think the crowd's a lot smarter than any one of us. And so whenever we have a consistent question that comes up, we reach into our crowd of seven-figure teams that we're running or big coaching clients or coaches, and we say, okay, here's the problem, what's the solution? And so we took a list of the best strategies for winning in multiple offers, and we created just a downloadable document that's the wisdom of the crowd. It's not anybody's one idea, but it's the top topics or tips from agents who are struggling to get their offer accepted with multiple offers. And so for anybody that goes to workmansuccess.com/impressive win, I'll make that available to you. It's a training thing, and I just want to give it to everybody. I think that the agents and the brokers who are on this call are the ones that are interested in growing and investing in their future. A final question for Alissa is, actually I have a couple more questions, but Alissa, how large of a broker do you consider big enough to be able to really effectively adopt a tool like a Buyside, or to have enough data that it makes it useful?
Yeah, great question, Verl. So I would say our average client is at least about 500 million in annual sales volume. We work with much larger firms, as you've heard from Rajeev and Karina today, but that's probably kind of our minimum that we look at today. We are looking to further expand the product over time to some of the smaller brokerage companies as well. But at this point, that's kind of our sweet spot and our target customer.
Well, I appreciate that. The last question is you're getting data from a lot of sources. I noticed that both both of our guests talked about, Zillow, and they talked about Realtor.com and acquiring all the data. Do you acquire the data at Buyside, or is individual partners having different data relationships and you're aggregating it all into the consumer experience with the, buyers that are actively looking, evaluations, and all of that?
Yeah, so Buyside really does the heavy lifting to pull in our customers' data on their behalf. And we really do that via the magic of APIs. So we work with their various data providers and vendors where that data lives to pull it in, primarily via APIs and data feeds. So we do a lot of the heavy lifting to make that nice and seamless for them.
I appreciate that. That's awesome. On behalf of RISMedia, Workman Success Systems, both of our guests at One Sotheby's International Realty, and also Rajeev with Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices, Fox and Roach, I want to say thank you. I think this has been a fascinating webinar. The comments on the message board during the webinar have been all positive with lots of good comments and questions, which means there's a lot of engagement. And so I appreciate you sharing with what's working in your companies. I wish you both the greatest amount of success. And once again, thank you to Buyside for sponsoring today's event. Thanks for coming, everybody. Have a great week.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.